Colleagues, I'd like to discuss a little bit about the really unfortunate series of events that happened yesterday around Breonna Taylor's death. Breonna Taylor was 26 years old, an aspiring nurse at the time of her death. She had been working as a certified medical technician. On March 13th, shortly after 12:30 a.m., Louisville police executed a search warrant in a series of raids related to Breonna's ex-boyfriend, using a battering ram to enter her apartment. Fearful of an intruder, Breonna's boyfriend fired one shot. In a series of return fire, 32 shots were fired back. Breonna was struck 8 times and killed. Her boyfriend would initially be charged with attempted murder, but eventually the charge was dropped. I bring this up because we spend a lot of time talking about gun rights. We spend a lot of time talking about anger and fear and the government and what you can and cannot do. And most people who have been protesting for more than 100 days are frustrated, are angry, are sad, are disgusted that this could happen any day. And as a matter of fact, has happened in Detroit with young Ayanna Stanley Jones. And I bring this up not to cause guilt, not to encourage everyone to be upset, but to say that unlike the overwhelming majority of Michiganders, the 38 of us have an opportunity to change the system, a system that we know is broken, a system that we know does not work, because you can, at any moment, while at home, asleep, with your loved ones, be fired upon. And in a situation where no one goes to prison, where no one is deemed at fault, no one is accused of murder, and no one stands for justice. And as a black man in America, that reality is all too real. My very best friend growing up was charged with premeditated murder while he was at home, on the phone with his girlfriend, with his mother asleep. Because one eyewitness said that they saw him and could identify him from 50 feet away. Being a black person in Michigan, in the US, you are never in the right place at the right time. At every moment, something could happen that could change your life fundamentally. And I just ask that we think about that we work on reforms that will change this, that will make it safe for you to, as people would say, stand your ground, but just to live, to be at home safely, to not worry if you have an alibi, to not worry if the police are coming in, to not worry if you need a firearm to defend yourself. Because that is not the reality that too many of our citizens deal with. That is not the reality that you live in. Because the only person who was found to have been left wanting, to have been endangered in this situation, were the 3 people in a nearby apartment whose walls were shot and whose reckless acts from the police officer were found recompense of potential 5-year terms for each one of their lives. Not to include, might I add, the pregnant woman and the fetus, which would have been a 4th person. As we talk about these spaces, as we talk about life, as we talk about these moments, it has been abundantly clear that Black lives matter differently, that we are counted differently, that we are protected differently. And people a year ago were not talking about these issues. And for the past more than 100 days, people have been saying, say her name, say Breonna Taylor. We have learned so many more names. And across all of the country, people look out and say, hey, that's not going to happen in my community. Well, that's what people in Kenosha, Wisconsin said. That's what people in Louisville said. That's what people all across this state, whether it be Georgia or any other community, have said, that won't happen here. And the only way that won't happen in Michigan is if we act on real police reform legislation. If we change some of the systems that empower not only no-knock warrants, but the way we look at drug trafficking, the way we deal with policing, the way we deal with this entire system. And we have an opportunity to address that this year in lame duck. And I'd ask that we do, because it can only happen if this is a bipartisan issue, not a Republican issue, not a Democrat issue, not a black or a white issue, but an issue where we think about how we value people's lives. Thank you, Mr. President. I'd ask that my remarks be printed in the journal.